2021, and I'm in the Atlanta area. Beautiful, picture perfect day. Temperature's about 70 degrees, no wind. You can see the water, I don't know, undulating or whatever, a little bit back there behind me, but it's a perfect day, not a cloud in the sky, and I'm a little more protected from the sun today because I'm closer to the woods, so I'm kind of in the shade of the sun. So anyway, it's just a beautiful day. Wearing my shorts and short sleeve shirt and enjoying God's nature. I love to be around nature. I love to go for hikes, for walks, for runs, and be outside. Listen to the birds chirping, and just brings in a lot of peace. And again, when you are around people that are not peaceful, that stress you out, that manifest on you, go off on you, trigger on you, turn into an alternate personality on you, which we're talking about today, it's no fun. So you got to get away and get out to nature, be out there where it's peaceful, and get your peace back so that you can enjoy life instead of struggling. I can imagine living in some of the cities in America and the world where you're around people that have a lot of demonic activity that trigger on you and get mad and yell and scream and manifest, and no peace when you're around people like that. So I've got a cool story to share that happened to me yesterday, and it was interesting. I went to go get some dinner at Wendy's. I'll let you know where it's at, but at Wendy's here in the Atlanta, Georgia area. And I was in a separate vehicle from a friend of mine that was behind me in line, and I was ordering food for myself, and I was going to also pay for them behind me. And when I went up to the front to pay for it, I told the person that I was going to pay like an extra 15 bucks to cover the person behind me. And they said, oh, well, that person was looking to order, a certain salad, and we ran out of the salad. So then, she decided to come out of line and to leave. And so I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, then I guess I won't be able to pay for their salad. So then when I went to pay for mine, which I got a salad, a taco salad, he said, well, you don't have to pay for it. The person in front of you paid for yours. I was like, what? I'm like, you're kidding. So I'm like, I think I might have had that happen to me once before, but never when I was looking to pay for the person behind me did I ever have the person in front of me pay for it. So anyway, so I got a free dinner last night, and very thankful, very grateful for what the Lord surprises us with, and it doesn't matter whether small or large. I've had some people that have donated very large donations, that the Lord has told them to donate, and not because, I would never ask anyone, for money. I won't do that. I'm like, Lord, if my ministry is worth anything, and then the people's lives will be changed, marriages will be saved, and people will donate because of that. And that's how it should be. I was reading about Paul in Corinthians, and how he was very thankful and grateful, for all the things that people had done for him. Also, I was reading in Galatians and Ephesians about Paul, and he talked about how, whether he's abased, whether he, has a lot of money or nothing, he's able to enjoy and have peace, and that he was very thankful for some people that were donating money to him, and that he would use that money, that it would be because of their account, that the fruit would be evident, back to them. That is how the Lord works. So anyways, I'm very thankful, grateful for anyone that gives anything and donates to our ministry. And so it's been a blessing to see that happen. So anyway, maybe you want to pay it forward today when you're in line at Wendy's, and someone will surprise you and pay for yours. I mean, that's crazy. It's like I don't do that very often to pay for the person behind me. And so you don't expect when you do decide to do it, and then they aren't able to order anything that they like, so then they leave, and you don't pay for that. Well, then you expect to pay for yours, and then someone pays for yours. It's like, what? Huh? Well, that was a quick payback, Lord. That's crazy. So anyways, 2021 Breakthrough Tour. March 20th, I'll be in Chattanooga, Tennessee at the Fairfield Inn. March 27th, Savannah, Georgia at the Marriott Savannah Riverfront. April 3rd, Luray, Virginia at Cooter's Place from Dukes of Hazzard. And then I may be coming to Indiana, I may be going back to Florida again, to Holiday, Florida in April. Stay tuned on that. And then May 22nd, I'll be in Hot Springs, Arkansas, the 22nd and 23rd at Highland Street Revival Church. May 29th and 30th in Merkel, Texas, Fountain Gate Merkel Church. And then June 5th, Needles, California, Needles Assembly of God, looking to confirm that. And then June 12th and 13th, Bernie, California, home group. And then later in June, maybe coming to Seattle. Looking to confirm that today. Just reached out to my good friend Mike Zachman. So, and we'll continue to schedule more. Again, you can find the schedule at restoredtofreedom.com, as well as on Facebook if you look up Restored to Freedom, my ministry page. So, all right. So the title of today's teaching is, how many altars and triggers do you have? You know, a lot of times people don't know how many they have. Don't have a clue. Most people don't. Like, I don't know, probably 95% of the people out there in the world are like, an altar? What the heck's an altar? An altar is short for alternate personality. And truth be told, most Christians are going to have a couple of alternate personalities. You know, and all you have to do is to get them to trigger. That means on a lot of them, don't do what they say. Don't do what they want you to do. And then they might get very mad, very angry. They might go off on you. Oftentimes they will protect that and hide that side of them, and they'll try to soften that. But they won't do that normally for their spouse, for their children. They will oftentimes trigger and go off. Triggering, I'll explain what that means, but you see that in most marriages, most relationships between parents and children. You know, it's rare to see people that don't have triggers and alternate personalities, altars. It's rare to see people that are calm and that can talk things through. You know, people that are healed from their past soul wounds, delivered from their demons, are going to be calm and loving, and they can talk through anything. You know, there's a couple different ways you get triggered, but I'm going to describe, you know, what this is. Most people have unhealed soul wounds from their youth that causes them to trigger on people, and they oftentimes will overreact and have an alternate personality. The only question is, how many triggers and how many alternate personalities do they have? Again, this includes most Christians. For some with a history of trauma, being around anything that reminds them of a traumatic event or experience can make them feel like they're experiencing that trauma all over again. So, you know, for instance, you grow up, you have a father that treats you harshly, or you have a mother that treats you harshly, and if you don't do what they want, they get mad, they get angry, they yell at you, they can berate you, they can treat you badly. So if you don't get those wounds healed, get delivered from those demons tormenting you, then what will happen is you'll have present day relationships that will oftentimes look like, smell like, feel like the same relationship that you had with your mom and dad or anyone else, and that will cause you to remember that experience from the past, and you will trigger and oftentimes say things or do things that will be like involuntary, subconscious. You don't even know it. Some of the triggers can be just, you just get quiet. You don't say anything, you know, and you shut down. Some of the triggers would cause you to get angry and overreact and get violent and yell and go off on a person. So multiple different types of triggers. You know, the healthy thing to do would be obviously to talk things through, but you can imagine if you've got a very, I don't know, angry, controlling father or mother, and then you end up getting married to someone that's very similar. Like oftentimes women will marry their dads, not saying literally, but they'll marry a husband that's very similar to their dad. And oftentimes women will marry, men will marry their moms. You see that common. And so oftentimes if they have a dad that, is overly controlling or get angry if you don't do what they want, then you end up getting married to someone that's very similar to that. So therefore you'll be like, oh my gosh, this is the same thing. I just married my dad all over again. Oh no. And so oftentimes you'll trigger. And the triggers could make you get really quiet, not say anything, because you couldn't say anything maybe to your dad, otherwise your dad would get really angry. But then eventually, typically with a spouse, if the person is being controlling and manipulative and hurting you, you will eventually rise up and say something. And oftentimes it's out of frustration, it's out of anger, and then you have an alternate personality now that comes out of that. Oh my gosh. And then what will happen is normally the person that's triggering you, if they're not healed and they're doing it in an ungodly way, they're being mean to you, then they'll point the finger at you and say, oh, look how bad that you are, when you're just simply responding. Now, you may be responding in a way that's not healthy, but it's only because of what you grew up with. And if you didn't get that healed, then you will trigger, and you'll trigger it over and over and over again. And there's multiple ways what that looks like. I'm going to talk about that. So again, you'll either react, number one, in a strong, emotional, elevated way to something that's maybe very small and trivial that someone does to you or says something to you. But you could also react and shut down and not say anything and be awkward that way. So, and then number three, what will happen is if you've repressed something that happened to you traumatic, oftentimes people say, I don't even remember much of my childhood. I don't remember from age 4 to 7. And it could be that there was sexual attacks going on to you. We hear this all the time at the ministry. If a little girl is being sexually touched, then oftentimes that's going to manifest to where she blocks it out, doesn't remember it. It may be that she ends up remembering it, or he remembers it when they're 35 years old, 40 years old, when they're safe now, they can actually receive it from the Holy Spirit. So again, some triggers include being extremely jealous. If your spouse or mate communicates to someone from the opposite sex, you're insecure, so you go off on them, you get extremely jealous. You get angry if people don't do exactly what you want. You feel overwhelmed. Oh my gosh, and all this fear and anxiety comes upon you. You don't know what to do, you don't know how to process it. Sometimes you get really quiet, you don't say anything. And then eventually it might bubble up and you might overreact and get really angry and then have it come out that way. Oftentimes anniversary dates of specific traumatic events will trigger people. Like it may be that you lost your mom or your dad, maybe that you loved, or maybe that they were bad to you, and you remember the date that they passed away, and oh my gosh, it triggers something from the past. Being judged, criticized, teased, or put down, and then either getting very upset or quiet. That's a trigger. A state of hopelessness, despair, or depression, that things will never get better. Again, you're going to hear a lot of demonic voices that are speaking to you, causing you to believe that, oh my gosh, things won't get any better, or things are going to go really bad. Again, remember, they did a study in 2005 that found that 85% of what we worry about never happens. And of the 15% that did happen, 79% of the people said they could handle it better than they thought, or it taught them a lesson that was worth learning. So about 97%, 97% of what you worry about. It's ridiculous. Don't worry. Don't listen to the demons that are speaking to your thoughts, because that's what's happening. All right, so that explains triggers. Again, triggers basically cause you to behave in ways that are not normal. Normal, you should be at peace. You should be able to talk about things. If you have a conflict with someone and you start to discuss it in a normal, calm tone, then that person should be able to discuss it back with you in a calm way. That's a healthy way to resolve concerns. That way you ask the person, so how do you feel? Well, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that. You can be honest, you can be safe. But a lot of times people don't feel safe, because in the past, in the history of their life, whenever they've tried to explain how they feel, they could get shut down, they could get yelled at. So they don't know what to do with it. Like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Well, if I say anything and how I really feel, that person's going to get mad. So then they end up later in life with other relationships they might have where they get to the point where they get triggered. They're like, okay, I can't speak the truth here. I better be quiet. And quiet will never resolve it because there's always going to be an issue there. And so that's why it's important, that both parties can be healed and delivered from the past. Because if they're not, then one of them normally will trigger in a angry way and not a healthy way. And then that normally shuts down the other person that's more of the Ahab spirit, where they don't say anything. So, all right. Alter. What's an alter? Again, an alter is an alternate personality. And what causes these alters, these alternate personalities? So, an alternate personality, is a wounded part of our soul. Our soul is our mind, our will, and our emotions. Our mind are our thoughts. Our will is our free will to choose, and our emotions. So that is our soul. Again, Satan's after our soul. Jesus is after our soul. Just because you ask Jesus to come into your heart to become saved doesn't take away the legal rights of the demons to torment your soul, your mind. That's why so many Christians in the church are tormented, and they hear the enemy all the time, and it causes them to trigger because they're not healed. So we've got to get the wounds healed from the past in order to take away the legal rights of the demons to torment us, and then we can have peace and joy, and feel free to speak the truth from us. So anyway, an alternate personality then is a wounded part of our soul. So the medical and the psychiatric community would label some of these erratic behaviors as being bipolar, by having a multiple personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder, alternate personalities, PTSD, manic depressive. There's a lot of people that are going to have multiple personalities. And they may only have one, they may have two, but most people are going to have a couple. All you have to do is not do what they want, and we'll see how they react. If they react very angry, or if they shut down and become very quiet, then that's not healthy. They're both extremes. All right, so the ability to disassociate is not a disorder, but it's actually a gift from God as a way to cope with the trauma. Alternate personalities, are caused by trauma. Emotional abuse, verbal abuse. It doesn't have to be yelling and screaming. It could be a soft, quiet control when you're growing up with a father or mother that says, you know what, we're not going to do what you want, we're going to do what I want. And then they end up shutting down the child from making any decisions. And then later in life, they can't make decisions because they're walking on eggshells. They're like, oh my gosh, if I don't make the right decision, I'm going to get yelled at. Well, wait a minute, you're grown up now. You don't have your dad in your life anymore, or your mom. And yet they get really anxious, and they're like, it's really hard for them to make a decision then, because it's based upon an unhealed wound from their past. That's why it's so critical for everyone to get their soul wounds healed from their past and then command the demons to go. Then they're going to be a lot healthier, a lot more joy, a lot more energy, a lot more fun. They're going to be normal. All right, so again, alternate personalities are caused by trauma. Emotional abuse, verbal abuse, physical pain, physical abuse, sexual abuse, which then results, once they've been abused, in an overwhelming emotion or pain that the core person can't handle. Again, we have a core person. People that trigger will oftentimes be in this alternate personality state quite often. But there's always a core person that oftentimes people fall in love with. They're like, oh my gosh, when I started dating, that person was so nice and so sweet and so positive. But then oftentimes when they get married, then these alternate personalities come out. And they get really, really angry, get really, really worked up, get really, really quiet. And so that's an unhealed wound that needs to be healed from the past. And you can do that at any point in time, but you have to recognize that that is the issue. Most times people go to psychologists, Christian psychologists, psychiatrists, and if they don't ever get to the spiritual roots of having the person see the people that hurt him or her when they grew up, to be able to forgive them truly from their hearts, have Jesus give them some words of insight or visions so they can forgive, then those demons are going to have legal rights to torment. Once they've forgiven, then they can take authority, command the demons to go that are attached to that. And then they can be the core person all the time. When you're not the core person all the time, then you will go in and out of these alternate personalities. Oftentimes you get very, could be very angry a lot of the time, very controlling, or you could be very quiet. Neither is normal, and neither is enjoyable to be around for a person, that has a relationship with them, because they're not sure what they're going to get. They're like, okay, where's the happy person that I used to know? That might be the core person. Maybe it's only 50% of the time, 60% of the time. Maybe it's much less than that. There's some people that have been hurt very deeply, and they're not the core person, but maybe 10% of the time. And then there's these alters, these alternate personalities, the majority of the time. And so then the spouse that, say, gets married to them says, oh my gosh, what happened to the person that I was dating? What happened to the person that was happy and joyful? I hardly ever see that person now. I see these other personalities that cause them to get triggered into it, and they are either mean and angry, or they're very quiet and passive. So, all right. Again, the alter's purpose is to hold the emotion or the pain so that the core person can continue to function. Again, most people are going to have a couple alters or alternate personalities, or many. People that have been satanic ritually abused could have thousands of these personalities. And I'll say this, oftentimes you can see this in a person if maybe they were hurt when they were a little girl. They can go back to that little girl's voice and say, various things from a little girl's perspective. Won't you please love me, care for me, spend time with me? And that's an alternate personality. Or they could be very violent and angry, and then that's an alternate personality. So again, alters can be created as early as in the womb. In the womb, you can create these alternate personalities. And again, all you have to do is, have an abusive father yelling and screaming at your mom that creates all this fear and all this anxiety within the baby inside the womb. Or there could be, I know some people that have had have told me, I've done sessions with them, that they said that their dad had punched their mom in the stomach trying to abort the baby. That's abuse, but that will create in them, insecurity, fear, abandonment, not being wanted, all these alternate personalities that will cause them to trigger. You can also get alternate personalities into your, older ages. If a person goes through a huge trauma in their life. So as coping skills increase, typically fewer alters are going to be created. So typically if a person gets screamed at and they're 2 years old, that's going to oftentimes create an alternate personality within that child versus a 50-year-old. If a 50-year-old gets yelled and screamed at, they can normally process it better because they're older. All right, so next, I'm going to talk about characteristics and then the effects of dissociation of these alternate personalities. So people with dissociation are commonly highly intelligent. They must be. They're dealing with, say, 5 or 10 or maybe even 100 different personalities. So they need to be bright in order to keep them all straight. Some effects of dissociation are depression, cutting or self-harm, constant uncontrollable fear, anxiety, rage, hearing voices, from the enemy, and emotional overreactions. Example, a depressed person has an alternate personality that is carrying emotion that is turned inward on the core person. Okay, people that have these alternate personalities, they can stay in that altered state for just a moment, for hours, for days, months, even years. And if there's a loss of time that they can't remember, then that's a good indication that they had disassociated. Another indicator of alters would be having trouble reading the Bible. Let me go back to that, an altered state. So, for example, this is very common. Let's say you're in a relationship with someone and they get triggered over something that's not healed from the past. It could be a myriad of things. It could be triggered because they're jealous. It could be triggered because they feel a real fear. They get overwhelmed. They hear a lot of demonic stuff, so therefore they're depressed. They could be in that state for several hours. They could go off on you. They could be quiet on you for several hours or several days. So they're not in their core personality now at this point. They're in a different personality because, again, they've not been healed. That's what happens when you go through a soul wound healing in a deliverance session, is you're going to get rid of all of that stuff so that you can be in a core personality state all the time. You can be happy, you can be joyful, have the fruit of the Spirit. You're not going to trigger. I've seen this really with my own life. It's amazing to watch where a person can be off, they can say things, they can provoke, they could be quiet. And what will happen is it won't trigger me. In the past, I might be a little irritated. And so I might be like, wait, what are you doing? Why are you going off on me for hours? Or why are you not talking for days? Now, you can respond to a person in a calm way, in a calm voice, in a loving voice, and that's a normal response. But if they are being triggered and they're getting very angry or very quiet, then not much you can do at that point until they come out of it. And it may be for days. They need, obviously, inner healing and deliverance. And then they can change to being, a peaceful person all the time. Think about Jesus. Did Jesus trigger on anybody? Nope, he didn't. And when you get healed and delivered from all that stuff, then you can love people more like Christ, because you won't take an offense. You won't get angry. You can speak the truth in love to a person. If they don't receive it, you don't get mad at them. You don't get jealous of people. You don't shut down, or you don't overreact. All right, so another indicator of alternate personality, would be having trouble reading the Bible or praying. Some alters know Jesus, but many don't. Some alters are mad or hate God, which may cause the core person to not want to read the Bible or pray. So I'll give you an example of that. I remember meeting a woman out in Seattle last year. She had been satanic ritually abused. It was obviously she was very anxious. She talked a lot. And she said, why would God let this happen to me? She said that one man that had satanic ritually abused her dressed up as Jesus and raped her, like multiple times. And he told her, you know what, if there was a God, if God really loved you, he wouldn't let this happen. And he would do that to her. So of course that will affect the person. The person will then say, you know what, that's true. Hey, well, why did God let this happen? It really causes them to disconnect from God, and they stay in that altered state, oftentimes for, it could be weeks, months, years. And then they do things and say things to other people that will hurt them because they're hurting. So out of their pain, they become an altered state of a different personality that's got demonic spirits that will say things and do things to hurt people in the church. I remember her saying things. She would take an offense at the drop of a hat. That's what will happen. And then she would say things to the pastor that were not good. And in fact, she had set up a session with one of the members in our team that's been satanic ritually abused. And when their session was to take place, that woman did not answer the call. And so then the woman that was doing the session eventually got a call back from her, but it was too late and she couldn't do the session. So then the woman took an offense. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I was only, whatever, hour late, hour and a half late. It's like, really? It's like, you've got to adhere to time. And so she took an offense, did not want to do a session then. And that's because she's hearing a lot of voices from the demonic spirits, not been healed from it yet. All right, here's another example. Well, the core person may be amnesic, partially or fully conscious of the trauma. And oftentimes what will happen is they know something happened to them when they were younger, but they don't know exactly what it was. They blocked it out. So what's interesting is that you can actually, if you are a trained deliverance minister, you can command that demonic spirit that knows that trauma, what happened, to come up and to speak to the person in their head, or it can come out of their mouth, and it will tell the person what happened. If they're ready to receive it, if they're ready to hear it, then oftentimes you can say, yep, you were sexually molested by your uncle, you were this by this person, that person, and then now they know. Now to get healed from that, because oftentimes that will cause the person to have anger and hatred and bitterness. Oh my gosh, I can't believe my uncle did that. But then you ask Jesus to come to give you a word. And Jesus will tell you the reason why your uncle did that was because your uncle was molested. Or your uncle, was exposed to pornography or something to that effect. So that you can understand, oh, well, that's why. He was young when he was violated. Well, then I can choose to forgive him from that. Yes. And then that takes away legal rights of the demons. You command the demons to go, and you're free. Then you can remember the traumas without any of the negative effects. So again, the alternate personalities know why they were created. They know their job is to carry the pain or the emotion. The alter knows what the emotion is. So that's why when we take a person through a session, we're like, well, let's go back to that trauma or that memory when you were young. Let's find out, what feelings did you have? Well, I felt really violated. I felt really betrayed. I felt really angry. And then they can also oftentimes be triggered to go back to that little boy, little girl that was hurt. And then we can bring Jesus in to heal that wound. And then you take authority, command the demons to go that attach to that wound. And the core person, may or may not hear the alternate personality talk about that incident. God may have determined the core isn't ready yet to hear it, or they're not ready to handle it. So, all right, so healing the woundedness, healing those wounds, that's how we get delivered from this. How does the world do it? How does the church predominantly do it? And then how does our ministry and other ministries do it that are effective? So the world would use the medical community, such as counseling and self-help books and therapy and psychiatrists, psychologists, drugs. Unfortunately, though, it doesn't work because you're not using Jesus. Now, we can't fix a spiritual issue by behaviorally telling people to behave better, to not do this, to not do that, because why? They're hearing these voices from the demonic spirits in their head, thousands a day. They could hear anywhere from 12,000 to 50,000 thoughts a day. That's a lot, of which 80% of what they hear is negative and 95% the same thoughts the day before. That was a study done in 2005 by the National Science Foundation. All right, and so what will happen is the person that gets hurt and wounded when they were younger will remember all the bad things that were done to them. Oh my gosh, the pain just won't go away. So what will they do? They will go to counterfeit comforts. They will seek out alcohol. I'm going to drink alcohol because alcohol is going to make me forget about it. Well, it might temporarily, but you'll always remember it within, could be hours later, or an hour, or several hours. It just wears off. Could be sex. Oh my gosh, gotta have sex. Because when they were little kids, they were introduced to pornography, they were sexually touched, so they end up desiring sex like all the time in an unhealthy way. Could be drugs. Okay, I gotta take drugs, gotta get my fix. But it never fixes anything. It's a counterfeit comfort. The pain never goes away because they keep on hearing the demonic thoughts, reminding them of all the bad things that happened to them. And they have anger, they have bitterness, they have tears. When you're healed from that past, when you ask Jesus to come to give you some words or visions of why those people did what they did to you, why they hurt you, then you can forgive, takes away legal rights of the demons, and you command the demons to go. Now, you can remember the bad things that happened to you without the associated tears or bitterness or anger to go with it. It's just a matter of fact. It happened. All right. So again, demons will not allow psychiatrists or psychologists to break the altars, curse, or forgive. So how does the church do it? Church talks about, well, just read your Bible more, pray more, go to church more, listen to Christian music more, fast, get Christian counseling. And why doesn't that work? Well, sometimes, occasionally it does, because they get to the point where they can actually truly forgive the people that hurt them. That takes away legal rights. Then they can command the demons to go. But most in the church don't understand this. Most will say, just forgive them. But the person's like, I can't. I keep hearing, keep seeing all those traumas and visions. I still have anger and bitterness because they don't involve Jesus, saying, Jesus, come, show me. Why did my dad do this to me? Why did my dad lie to me and tell me this and hurt me and share things with me he shouldn't have? Why did my mom do these things? Why did my aunt? Why did my grandma? Why did my pastor? All these people, why did they hurt me? And then they can't forgive. Nope, I won't forgive. I refuse to forgive. I'm so mad, so angry. It's what they oftentimes will say. And the pain doesn't go away. Again, you can drink, you can smoke, you can do all the counterfeit comforting that you want to do, and that's only a temporary fix for a few minutes, maybe an hour or two. And then eventually those thoughts and memories and traumas come back, and you're still a mess. And then you ruin your own relationships. You self-sabotage your own relationships. You have people that love you, and then they are like, well, I can't deal with this. You know, you keep triggering. You keep turning into these altered states. Your core person doesn't stay. You keep checking out. You keep either getting very angry, violent, or you get very quiet. And it's like, it's hard to have a relationship like that. So, all right. And so what do we do at Restorative Freedom? And there's other ministries that do this. We have Jesus that comes and speaks to you about why the person did what they did. And you explain your emotions, what you're feeling. And then the Lord, Jesus, he died on the cross. He took our pain and the associated emotions that were with it, that were hurtful and angry. And it will bring truth into Satan's lies. And then we forgive. We do our part. I choose to forgive whoever it was that hurt me. All right, so the relationship between these alters, alternate personalities, and demons. The trauma or resulting emotion is the entry point for the demons. So it makes sense. Again, if you grew up with a great father, a great mother that loved you, treated you great, you didn't have any sexual stuff that was done to you, you're going to be, and you're raised in a godly home, you're going to be a lot better off than those who were raised in an ungodly home where you were treated poorly by your father and or mother, where you're spoken down to, and you could never receive the love that you needed and wanted. So you're going to have pain, going to have emotions, and that trauma and that pain and those emotions are the entry point for the demons to come and to start speaking to your mind and your thoughts and getting you to go into these altered states of where the demons are convincing you that this is the truth. You have to look this way, you have to perform this way, you have to be this way in order to be loved. And that's not the truth. Jesus loves you no matter what. And so you're always having to perform, you're always having to try to be the best. You're always could be having a lot of issues with body images. A lot of times that's what happens is we get hurt. We turn to food as a counterfeit comfort. Doesn't have to be alcohol, doesn't have to be smoking, doesn't have to be drugs. We can turn to food in an unhealthy way and eat food that is not. You can also do the same thing with exercise. You can exercise to the point, I mean, I've seen it in the gym where you got these guys that bulk up and they just lift more and more, heavy, more and more. Well, most of those, well, all of those really, are hearing demons telling them, you've got to lift more, get stronger. Sometimes it may be because they could have been hurt and abused by their parent growing up, by their dad. So they're like, I'm not going to let that happen again, so I'm going to get stronger than my dad so I can beat him up. And then you have women, oftentimes, that are, watching, Hollywood movies and how, oh my gosh, being told you got to look sexy, you got to be sexy to be approved. Well, then that's setting them up for disaster as well, because all they're going to be doing is drawing men that are ungodly to them, and those that are godly typically don't want, women that are sexy. They want women that are going to be pure, and that Proverbs 31. And so it's amazing when you actually see the deeper spiritual things that are going on in this world. All right. When someone says that they are tormented by an emotion, say anxiety, fear, they're feeling an alternate personality that's being tormented by the demon. So they're hearing demonic thoughts. They're tormented. They're like, oh my gosh, I can't sleep at night. All I'm hearing is all this negative stuff. I can't get it out of my mind. I can't sleep. In fact, we just got a call from a gentleman from North Carolina. And he's like, I can't sleep. I haven't slept for months. And that's torment. It's going through hell. All right, so the emotion held by the altar or belief of a lie, example, guilt or shame, is a legal right for the demon to stay. So again, if you are feeling guilty, you're feeling ashamed, you're feeling angry, you're feeling bitter. You think about depression. Depression is really anger turned towards inward on our core personality. So oftentimes people are frustrated, like, oh my gosh, my spouse just never changes. They're the same, they're tormenting me every day, and they won't ever change. They won't ever let up. They'll just continue to be controlling and manipulative and dominating. And I hate that, but they don't do anything about it. They stay in that environment and they keep getting tormented more and more with their demons. So again, if you have an emotion that's being held by that alternate personality, guilt, shame, anger, bitterness, it's a legal right for the demon to stay. The demon may attempt to interfere with the alternate personality, breaking the curse or forgiving. I see that all the time in our ministry. I tell people, I'm like, you got to forgive everyone that hurt you. Well, you have no idea. They did really bad things to me. They raped me, they yelled at me, screamed at me, abused me, stabbed me in the back, betrayed me, da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, yep, I know. It's because they had demons. And the demons in them told them what to do to hurt you. They knew what they were going to do was going to hurt you. And then you got hurt. And you haven't forgiven them. Jesus, before he died on the cross, said, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. So we have to forgive. That's how you break the legal rights of the demons, so you can command them to go. Is you say, you know what? The only reason that person hurt me is because they were hurt when they were growing up. So I choose to forgive them, no matter what they did. And that can be hard for people, but if you ask Jesus to come, he will show you them from his perspective. Remember the scene in the movie The Shack? The guy was beaten up by his dad, who was an alcoholic in the shack. And he was very angry with his dad, very angry with God. But once they finally showed him a video of, it was like a vision of his dad being beaten up by his grandfather, then he could forgive him. He's like, oh my gosh, that's the only reason why my dad beat me. It's because he was beaten up by his dad. Yep. And that's the only reason why people hurt us, is because they have not gotten healed and delivered yet. So we need to separate the person from their demons. The demons are affecting them to have these altered states of personalities. And then they do things to hurt you. And when you get hurt, you take the bait, you get angry, you take an offense, you remember all the bad things, then guess what? You will be tormented. And there's nothing that Jesus can do to help you at that point until you forgive. You got to forgive people. Forgive. That's a huge blocker. Billy Graham once said 75% of the people that are in the hospitals are there because they refuse to forgive. If they would only forgive, they could be healed. And that's true. All right, so the emotion held by the alternate personality, is the name of the demon that they have. So we can find out the exact emotion from the altar. And I'll say this, so I was dealing with, I deal with people all the time. Take them through sessions all the time. And we basically get the wounds healed from the time they were in the womb to the current day. Go back and heal them, and normally that takes 45 minutes, could be an hour. And again, Jesus shows them all these people that hurt them. Oh my gosh, my dad hurt me, my mom hurt me, my ex-husband, ex-wife, all these people. Well, they were hurt. That's why they did what they did. We can forgive them once we see them through Christ's eyes. Then at the end, we command the top two demonic spirits that are in charge of that person to identify themselves before the courts of heaven so they can't lie. It's very cool. The person will hear the voice of the demonic spirit telling them why they have legal rights to torment, and if they still have any. If they don't have any legal rights, if you've forgiven everybody, repented for what you've done, then normally you can take away all legal rights. You can then command them to go. So you could have the spirits of Jezebel, Leviathan, Ahab, Legion, you name it. There's tons of demons that are out there. And once you come out of agreement, taking the legal rights away, you have peace. And it can cause you to make better decisions, can cause you to be more disciplined in your life, healthy, more joyful. You won't have the ups and the downs, the different personalities. You won't have where you get really angry and or violent or get really quiet. You'll be the same core person all the time. Trying to think, what else is there? All right, so essentially that's, I guess I can go through this with you. How do you get an alternate personality to talk to you? If you're doing a session, if I'm doing a session with someone, oftentimes the core person may be nervous, scared, doesn't know what to expect. I never heard of dissociation. They're embarrassed that they may have brokenness or they may have demons that are interfering. So again, the best question is, what are some of the worst things that ever happened to you when you're growing up, especially as a kid? And then you can ask them, did this happen, where you're currently living? Did it happen outside? Did it happen in the home? How old were you? What state? Which room? What were the words spoken? What did it smell like? And you can actually take them back to that trauma, and then they can they'll get triggered into that little girl, little boy. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm scared. Or oh my gosh, this person's saying this to me. And they can actually recall what that trauma was. Then we can ask Jesus to come to heal that right then and there. And when Jesus comes, he'll say, yep, I'm so sorry that these things happened to you. I love you. And you need to forgive, because those people were also hurt when they were growing up. So there are also things that are called problem alters, alternate personalities. Their difficulties and ways to deal with them. So you could have angry alternate personalities, angry alters. They have a right to be angry, but they won't give it up. They won't forgive. I see that a lot. People are like, oh, I'm so mad. This person sexually hurt me my whole life. I'm so mad and so angry at them. I'm like, ah. And that oftentimes can affect a person sexually. They're like, oh my gosh. They go through a divorce, they get remarried, and if they've not truly forgiven the ex-husband, ex-wife for that, they can then be triggered when they have another relationship with another spouse, and that ruins their relationship. They can't, do what they want to do, and it will affect them because they're still angry. They have bitterness. They have hatred. So they have to forgive. There's protector altars that won't let you get to the other altars or core when threatened. These altars may hate God, believes God wasn't there. God actually caused the trauma. Proverbs 18:19. There's destructive altars, does destructive activities to the core person. These altars think the demons help them or are its friend. These altars carry more than one emotion, which gives the demons several legal rights. There's hysterical altars. You can't even talk to these altars because they are too traumatized, or they're still in trauma. So you have to find a way to get Jesus involved as soon as possible, and then use God's word on that altar. So you can imagine, most people are going to have various alternate personalities and alternate triggers. And the triggers will cause them to not have peace. And then you're in a relationship with someone, you're like, gee, I can't understand why I can't get along with them all the time. The person gets, either triggered to becoming very angry, very selfish, very jealous, or they're very quiet and they don't know what to say. They're like, oh my gosh, I'll just get quiet, not say anything. And that does not fix the issue. You got to get healed from the soul wounds, command the demons to go, and then your core person will be there all the time. And it's great, we can have the core personality be present, and that's the person normally most people will fall in love with before they get married. And then they get married, and all these alternate personalities that are just unhealed soul wounds will take over, and it will sabotage their relationships. So that's why oftentimes the longer that you date a person, the more that you'll see these altered states, these alternate personalities, because the demons will start to let their guard down, and then they will trigger on that person. Again, to be healed from the wounds, can be done, should be done, has to be done if the person's ever going to have peace. And if you have a husband and wife, they both do this. So I'm excited because yesterday I got a call from a lady that wants her whole family to go through healing and deliverance. Everyone. So I'm planning to do a session with husband and wife, and then the kids. And it will be beautiful because oftentimes there's physical pains that manifest from the demons, because again, you get hurt. Again, most times you'll have a mom or a dad that it's not healed, and they will say things and do things to their own children that will hurt them, and that can cause their children to then be angry and be bitter, not forgive, and that can create sickness and disease in our bodies. There's spirits of infirmity that normally will attach when we get hurt, and have pain. I do personal sessions, typically, 4 to 7, 8 a week. And my donation rate is $100 for a session. Normally they're around an hour long, but we basically go through and say, hey, let's start at the very beginning. Let's start at when you were in the womb. Do you remember what your mom and dad, did they want you? Did they fight a lot? Did, your mom have a stressful birth? Were you born prematurely? Was there a C-section? Things like that will affect children their whole lives if they don't get those healed. And then what was your life like with your father, with your mother, with your stepfather, stepmother, any sexual stuff that happened? So we write those all down. We go back and we ask Jesus to come, get those healed. And if we need to interrogate, we interrogate the demonic spirits. They come forward, they speak to you. You have control over them during it. It's all done calmly. And it's amazing. People feel lighter, more joyful, more peaceful. Again, we have about 150 some people in 9 countries that are now doing this under our ministry, Restorative Freedom. You can go out to restorativefreedom.com. You can click on, personal ministry, and you can find those that are closest to you. Wherever you're at, you can email them to set up an appointment. Or you can have me do a session. So, alrighty, I think that's it. So, again, and when you're healed and delivered from this stuff, my gosh, you have so much peace. I thank God. I don't hear demonic stuff in my head anymore. No more. My gosh, when you got a clear mind, you can sleep soundly at night. You can go to bed. You can have good dreams. You can wake up refreshed. Otherwise, you're under torment. Torment. It's not fun to be under torment. And when you're freed from all this, then you're going to stay that core person. You know, most people's core personalities are going to be good to be around. It's the altered states, the alternate personalities that are filled full of demons that are not fun. When you get triggered and you go off on a person, you get angry, you control them, you want your way, you know, or you get quiet and you don't say anything. So, alrighty, I will let you guys go. Love you, and we'll see you on YouTube. And again, I'm on Facebook at Nelson Schumann, NELSON SCHUMAN, and we'll see ya.